My wife and I, we had a lot of fun, man, for a long time. But she had this girlfriend. That fucked it up. With the big titties, you know the type of girlfriend I'm talking about, that I tried to ignore for 6 months. When she'd come in the house, like, hello there, how you doing? I don't really notice your tits. Oh.
I would like to be the mayor of Tit Town, if I could, okay? I'd like to drive a big truck full of tits down the Tit Turnpike right into the middle of Tit Town.
Don't you wish the guy walking in front of us would squeeze our tits for like 1 second?
Not an ass man. I'm a tit man. I like big ass boobs. Now and forever. Not like a black guy, Vita.
Give me back the tits! Give me back the tits!
Welcome to Last Man on Earth. My name is Lex Berger. As always, I'm flanked by Matt Ralston. Matt is sporting his new Nancy Pelosi tattoo. I can't tell you where he put the tattoo, but let's just say when he becomes aroused watching his stone-faced elderly girlfriend on C-SPAN, that tattoo spells out, Pelosi did this to me. She's back, Matt. Your lady friend with the surgically enhanced face.
Yeah,
I just read she's going to be confirmed as the Speaker of the House again. That's
I have
early straw poll.
I have little opinion on it. It seems like she's very well hated, but I can't think of a Speaker of the House that hasn't been hated. I mean, you're kind of a divisive figure.
Denny Hastert was beloved by his teen wrestlers. Well, she is hated mostly by the opposition, and I think she's hated by a lot of Democrats as well. But she does bring in the money. She brings in, she's the top fundraiser still, and that sort of carries. She's also the eldest person, I think, one of the eldest people there. But I think she actually just fundraises for a number of people and gives them money, and that's relatively important. I don't know what else.
I mean, I guess. Well, she could just have a job titled fundraiser and kind of stay out of the whole political process.
I think when she leaves, she's going to take her money with her. She just scares me. The ladies with all the plastic surgery, especially when they get older, they have that weird, creepy Chucky face thing going on, and it just scares us. I just can't look. It gives me the creeps for some. I mean, it's not like I have to have sex with her, but it just seeing her, like when they talk but their face doesn't move, it gives me that sort of like Silence of the Lambs, skin suit type.
We've got to figure out. And I don't know why, as a society, we haven't figured it out, but plastic surgery almost never works.
No.
Yet it's been going on for 40, 50, 60 years.
I think it works. I think it works when you need it the least, which is like the young ladies who get it. It works when you're younger, and then as your body and skin start to sag, it progressively looks worse and worse.
Right.
So when you need it the least, I think probably like in your 20s, you can have a touch up here or there, and it's not noticeable. It looks nicer, I guess, to get rid of some wrinkles or whatever. But as your skin starts to crepe, as they say on late night infomercials,
crepe.
It's called crepe skin. When your skin starts to fold like an accordion. And then you pull it really tight in some plastic surgery, then it never looks right after that. You start looking like a Vincent Price movie. So, I mean, obviously boobs and other stuff young co-ed girls get seems to work pretty well. But when you're in your 70s, it's not going to cut it.
What other thing? I mean, I guess people still smoke cigarettes. And it's like, well, they kill you. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure. But, I mean, what other thing do people just keep doing that has such a poor track record?
I don't know. Well, with vanity, obviously, they're not. It's not just plastic surgery. They're buying so much fucking. I mean, I am a aficionado of late night infomercials, and it's all beauty products for Cindy Crawford beauty products for ladies in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I
can only imagine how much they're spending on rubs and ointments and these emollients and the cantaloupe acid thing and the other shit and all stuff like that. It's just, I don't believe any of it does anything, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Well, yeah, all chicks waste a ton of money on stuff like that. That's why they never have any money when they're younger.
I heard a stat that kind of just freaked me out the other day, that people in the United States, on average, own 5 times as many pieces of clothing as they did in 1980. Which I kind of vaguely remember 1980, and people were dressed.
Yeah.
I don't remember people being short of clothes back in 1980, like people I have no shirt today, or can't wear pants, I'm out of pants. So people seem to be perfectly dressed in the 80s for work and for play, but now they have, on average, 5 times as many clothes. And I assume it's like a statistical median type thing where people like myself who've been dressing the same since the age of 12 don't have any more clothes, but then some people have 10 or 20 times as much clothes as they used to have.
Well, I feel like in the 80s you couldn't go into Old Navy and buy like 5 shirts for $20.
Well, that's true. That's true.
As
There was
well.
no Walmart. There was not a Walmart necessarily back then to get like the 6 Tees for $20. That's what
Yeah, I'd be curious like if the average price of per unit of clothing has, like maybe in the 80s you had like the one dope leather jacket.
They hadn't fully
wore that all the time.
They hadn't fully exploited Indochina child labor yet.
Right.
That did not come until like until the 90s and the World Trade Organization, when we learned that like we could actually have like 9-year-old girls in Myanmar like stitching shit. So you're right. It was mostly American-made products. They probably were more relatively expensive. People do buy, women especially buy lots and lots of shit. I'm just gonna lay that out for you now. This week's show is sponsored by Andrew Cuomo for supporting taxpayer subsidies to build Jeff Bezos' helipad at the new Amazon HQ2. $3 million is like only 20 cents a person, says Cuomo to himself because he's too scared to say it out loud. The Jeff Bezos taxpayer-funded helipad. Nope, you can't use it. I want to talk about Amazon later because we got an email about that, but they did. New York was proud to say they're limiting Bezos to 120 helicopter flights a year on the helipad.
Okay.
So you can only
Sounds like about right.
like that was like he's like, I want you to build me a helipad so I don't have to drive or take the subway. And they're like, okay, but here's the deal: we're going to pay for your helipad and we're going to build it, but you can't use it more than 120 times a year. It's like, okay, done. Okay, done. Like,
yeah,
well, we nailed it. We nailed Bezos on that one.
Yeah, isn't he splitting? I mean, they split up the headquarters, right? So he's not even going to be there full time.
Well, he'll be helicoptering from, I guess, D.C. to New York, so he's going to helipad. And so, like, literally, like, New York said, okay, we'll pay for the helipad for you, richest man in the world. We'll buy you a helipad. But, look, there's going to be a couple days. If you try to use it too much, we're going to say no. And also they said he has to make a water-based approach. So he can't circle the land. So, poor feel bad for Bezos.
I could see people being rightfully upset about that.
Yes, they are. But guess what they're going to do right after that? They're going to shop on Amazon. It's still the best place to shop. Do not forget to become a patron of the show on patreon.com/lastmanearth. Thanks to all our new patrons. Get in the shit now before I take away this offer of you to pay us. I don't know when that's going to happen. If I was thinking about, like, the most corrupt thing I could think was, like, the WWE going to Saudi Arabia to do their thing anyhow after, like, they killed Khashoggi and everything.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon is just like a beast of like a money maker. And I was thinking, like, it's so crude, but then I thought, like, they're WWE. I mean, they don't really like, it's sort of like football or basketball like that. They're just a unscrupulous sport. So why would they care that, like, oh, the King's killing like people? What the fuck? It's wrestling.
Yeah. And they don't even care when their own wrestlers die.
No, like, why? It was like, how can you do this, WWE? And Hogan, and like, Hogan, how can you come out of retirement to wrestle in Saudi Arabia? I'm like, I don't know. $4 million paycheck?
Vince McMahon is a real life bad guy. Like, he's a bad person.
He's like a Batman villain.
He's so comfortable in his skin with this that he just made himself the bad guy in the wrestling.
Yes.
Like he has the character of the bad person. And also, he is that in real life.
He's a flesh peddler, if you will. But I used to like the product, and I don't hate pornographers, so I'm getting off that topic. If you wish to contact the show, hit us up on Twitter at Last Man Podcast or on Facebook, also Last Man Podcast. All right, on to the show. Matt, when did you finally cancel your GQ magazine subscription? Was it a month ago, 6 months ago? I never quite understood GQ.
I don't understand it either. I look at it, if I'm in the dentist's office or something, and I swear to God, it's just always the same shit. It's like, do you wear a brown belt?
Yes, it's always about belts,
black
right?
Shoes and just shoes and belts. I'm like, who fucking reads this? This is lame.
Well, I think back in the day, like when Rolling Stone was going and other magazines were going, they would actually hire good writers to pen meaningful pieces at times.
Yeah.
They'd actually do political pieces, or they do like social commentary pieces, or about men's world, sports, auto, and stuff like that. Now you're right. It's just this fill of like sort of like e-commerce shit you can buy. Like,
yeah, and like crappy, like sharper image stuff.
Yes.
Like the new vapes you have to see.
Yes.
I'm just like, I don't have to see any of this. What do you
They keep selling those things online. Like I see those ads for like these websites where you can see the latest hot gadgets, and yeah, it's all sharper image shit. And like that, how is that possibly cool for a guy to like want to be impulsively shopping? I
would assume if you're a woman and you notice that the guy you're dating has subscribed to GQ,
yes.
that's like a red flag, and
yes.
you tell all your friends. And he's going to be into cigars, which is gross.
Like I'll look at like the $2 million state of the art car, like some wildly fantasy object, but I'm not going to look at an $800 suit, like lineups of $800 suits or $600 watches. That doesn't appeal to me. Things that I could actually buy if I wanted to, I suppose, has no appeal to me.
It just represents the worst kind of guys, the Lawrence Fishburnes of the world. The guys that that think cigars are cool, and they're like, "Did you see my new sunglasses?" And I'm like, "Is this what we're talking about right now? Like, you are lame. You're like a lame dude."
I do remember when I went to when I was a kid. I guess I was a kid. I don't remember the Midwest. I have relatives in Chicago, so I visited Chicago, and how different Chicago was from the West Coast was like it's like so unmaterialistic that when someone bought, I remember one of my cousins bought a VCR. And like the whole neighborhood came over to look at it. And it wasn't even like the nice one. It's like the low end VCR. And you got the VCR. Like that's like it was probably like an $80 VCR. Like, and the whole like neighborhood actually came over to look at it like it was the birth of baby Jesus.
That's sad.
It was just like they're so non-materialistic. Like, oh, maybe we'll get one for like 2 Christmases from now or something like that. And it's not that they're all poor. It's just that they just didn't give a shit to buy stuff unless they really needed it. It's just a different mentality. Like, do I really need it? Nah, that's okay. I'll get the kids' shoes instead or something. There was no desire to like. I'd rather like it was cool to go to your neighbors and look at their VCR and not have to have one yourself.
Right. Yeah, I got my. I didn't get a lot of stuff like this, but my mom splurged and got me the pumps, the Reebok pump,
nice.
The first pumps. I think I was in the 3rd grade.
That's really helped your basketball shooting, I'm sure.
No, I actually became a huge target. Her plan to do something nice kind of backfired, but kids are stupid. But they really were like, "Oh, so you can dunk now?" And
I don't know the pumps.
No, that's not how.
What did the pumps do? They just pump. It just pumped air into the shoe, right?
It didn't do anything. It was supposed to like. It was just
so your
tongue.
ankle support, right?
Yeah, like it just made the shoe snugger. It was just the tongue inflated a little bit.
So you could have just tied the shoelaces a little tighter.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So anyhow, GQ magazine, which we now know is utterly ridiculous, and as far as I can tell, they're all funneled content from India farms of guys who write content. They just click off male lifestyle, publish something about belts and ties. They of course are very PC, like all the remaining magazines. They decided for their Man of the Year award again. I didn't realize the 2nd year in a row. They're going for Serena Williams.
When are you going to give me my apology? You owe me an apology. Say it. Say you're sorry.
She's the new Caitlyn. She's the Caitlyn Jenner of 2018, which is like all you have to do is say Serena, and people are like, "Oh man, you're so inclusive and diverse and empowering." Like you don't have to say anymore. It's like we got Serena. She's on the cover, and this is a men's magazine. Check us out.
Right.
But what happened was. In their cool desire to be virtuous, they called her Woman of the Year, and they used this like edgy graffiti artist to do the cover, and they put the word "women" in quotation. The artist uses quotation marks because that's apparently his signature.
Well, I'm confused on that looking at the cover right now because it says Men of the Year, and then like you said, men is X'd out, and then woman in quotes.
In quotes.
But wouldn't it be women of the year? Because it said Men of the Year, but is she the only person?
She's the only woman who. Well, actually, I think they gave it to another woman too. It's so fucking confusing, Matt. And what happened immediately was, of course, every single Serena fan, which are just insane, angry women, who jumped on this and said, "Why did you put women in quotes?" and accused GQ magazine of demeaning Serena Williams. You can't really say anything about Serena Williams other than she's amazing, powerful, and beautiful without being attacked for demeaning her.
Well, it is kind of funny because she is very manly. She's on the cover of this men's magazine, and the woman is in quotes. So I'm reading it like Woman of the Year.
Yes,
like,
you're reading it like that, and I would read it like
that's
that.
That's not how it's supposed to be.
No, it's supposed to be actually very complimentary, and so the GQ marketing people had to try to explain to this angry rolling tide on social media of people who were threatening them that they actually hired this super edgy urban street artist who designed stuff, and his signature thing is to put text in quotes for whatever reason, because I guess edgy urban artists have run out of ideas.
Yeah, because that's real edgy.
If I think an idea sounds like something Kanye would do, then I think it's pretty fucking stupid.
Yeah.
So here's the question: like, what is actually the dumbest part of the story? The fact that GQ magazine exists. The fact that they went out of their way to pick a woman, Serena Williams, the fucking Allah or Muhammad of the PC culture, who you can't make fun of or draw cartoons of, to try and appease, I don't know, people that don't even read their own magazine. The fact they went out of their way to hire a cool street artist to make themselves seem hip, or the fact that the guy works with quotes for some reason and that pissed off Serena's people and everything fucking backfired in their face. What's the dumbest part of that entire story?
I guess the dumbest part is the very obvious reach for relevancy and edginess by putting the woman on the. It's like, here's what we're gonna do. All these people that make salaries, God knows why, we'll put a woman on the instead of man. We'll make it a woman. It's like, okay, yeah, we get it. I get it. I get what
strong,
you're doing.
Powerful woman.
We understand. It's fucking stupid. You're stupid. Everyone that reads this magazine is stupid. And I also don't get why whoever it is that has to explain to these yentas that, this is what the artist does and it's not. How about we stop explaining shit to people about why they're wrong and just let them figure it out? Because I feel like that's all I do is tell people why they're wrong. And it doesn't really have any effect on them. They're still going to be wrong about a bunch of other shit. There's just people that are habitually... It's people that I've noticed this. People nowadays, they want to have opinions. They want to be informed and they want to be the person that has all these hot takes at the party. But they don't want to invest the effort to actually have valid opinions.
No.
So they won't read, and then they'll just sort of like have these stances.
This is how Twitter has gone into the real world, which is they're literally in conversation now just retweeting information
right
to you live face to face.
Right.
There's been this whole thing about how Twitter has made people angrier and more demonstrative and more hardcore in their positions, but with less information than ever before to support their positions. And now that carries over to real life, where they just want to tell you what shit that exists because they heard it on a podcast for 5 minutes, or they had an article on Facebook liked. The level of the low information levels among people who make exclamation point commentary is quite dramatic.
Yeah, I have a friend who's like a huge Trump guy, and he'll never really admit that. But so he's obviously getting these points from some kind of radio station while he's driving, and then sort of repeating them. So he comes in and he's he's got this smoking gun piece of information. And he's like, I think the Democrats are the ones that gave the FBI the information about the Trump meeting. And I was like, yeah, they very well may be. And so then we got in this argument. I quickly realized he didn't know what he was talking about. So I said, okay, instead of me arguing with you, I'm just going to send you these 2 articles. I'm going to text them to you right now. Just read these and then get back to me with your opinion. And he goes, I don't read.
I think people have always, on politics, have always had very simplistic ideas, vocally simplistic stuff. I don't think that's changed a lot. I don't think they always use, 80% of people used to read newspapers. I think they mostly read the comics in the sports section.
Yeah.
I don't think the average American used to go in depth on New York Times articles on, overseas or politics or the economy. So I think it was always you followed whoever your political leader, whoever your partisan side was. I think what's changed now is people think they're informed. People think they're informed.
Yeah.
Is they're getting fake news, as it were. And so now they get revved up thinking not only do I feel this way, but now I'm validated in my feelings and I have all this information, which is all generally false or very cursory. So now I can really argue. Before it was just I always vote Democrat, I always vote Republican, I hate Trump, I love whatever. But that's just a sloganism. But now they back it up with bad information. They really have you now, because now they have bad research or bad stories, unfounded stories, because Alex Jones passed something to them.
Yeah, because I might be referencing the New York Times, and then they'll say something like, well, the New York Times is not a credible news source and they're super biased. And it's like, okay, so there are a few problems, but in terms of sources, I don't know how you can do a lot better in this day and age. And meanwhile, their source is Alex Jones, who's twisted something from a source.
Yes.
And they're acting like these two things are, well, actually that their source is better. So you can just handpick your source, and you can find any source to say any fucking retarded thing that you already think. So
have you ever tried to read a newspaper front to back, like cover to cover?
To.
I mean, and I think they've cut down on pages quite dramatically on print editions. But I remember in the old days, like your city's version of the LA Times, whatever it was, especially a major city paper, the front section was like 60 pages of like articles, and they weren't mostly long form, but it would take you a few hours to get through the whole section daily. So I don't know that many people were actually, the guys who used to ride on trains or had long commutes or something might have read it, and certainly people in their certain areas. But I can't believe that great a percentage of Americans actually read a lot of the hard news in the papers.
It was cumbersome to read, and I mean, you would see occasionally, you probably knew the people that were reading them because they'd have giant stacks of them, and I was getting the newspaper up until like 2011 or 12 because I'm just technologically behind, and I was living in this really crappy house with these guys, and they just said you need to stop. Like, we can't have this fucking all these newspapers laying around.
Yeah, huge amounts of newspaper. They attract roaches, by the way.
I mean, it was like really?
Yeah, like when they get wet and stuff like that, it attracts bugs and roaches.
It was probably the 10th grossest thing that was happening
in the apartment, yes.
in that place. But
it's a lot of a fucking paper though.
Yeah, it's a lot of paper. It's probably a waste of paper. And
I think most guys go for the women go for whatever section, the men go. I mean, there's a reason why they have a women's lifestyle section in the paper and shopping section, and with the Macy's ads, and there's a reason why they have the sports section, and then there's the comics and the crosswords and the whatever else they have. I've seen people are sort of picking and choosing what they go through in the newspapers. There weren't many people reading cover to cover, even of the front page news, which is pretty dense. I mean, the New York Times is pretty dense.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have a lot of time to do that. But yeah, no, we have a very low information society. The Serena Williams people are just fucking nuts. Like, she is the Muhammad of America. She's protected by this cadre of people and I can't really point. I mean, she's a good tennis player for sure, and she's unusually strong, but I can't really point to a lot of things. And I'm sure she's done some good charity work here and there. I can't really point to any monumental thing she's actually done for anybody but herself. And she's such a weird sort of figurehead idol for people. First just for women being a sports star, I wish women did better than that. Like, I know guys love jocks and they admire jocks. I wish women did better than that. Like, had better better idols. But no, they went with the overly muscular, 180-pound woman who seems to complain and dramatize and complain about her life so much, which I'm sure has some downsides to it, but seems to have a lot of upsides.
Yeah, she's super self-righteous and she's opinionated, but all of her opinions are just centered around what's best for her.
Yes.
Bottom line. Whereas, Muhammad Ali was in prison.
Yes.
And
there is no comparison between Serena Williams and Muhammad Ali, other than they probably took some Muhammad Ali took a shitload of racial hatred. She's probably taken some. There's always every 2 years some idiot in the stands yells something racist to her somewhere. And so I'm sure that's unpleasant to deal with. But outside of the emotional impact it has on her, hasn't had any, obviously, material impact on her life whatsoever.
No. And Michael Jordan was lame, but he's, maybe the best athlete of all time, so I get why he would be admired. Charles Barkley had a point. He had a stance. I'm not politically correct. I'm not a role model. I thought that was cool. So I could see kind of him making magazine covers and... I don't know if you guys here and there, I think, have been kind of
stronger women than it's always celebrities. Well, I did see Emily Ratajkowski, the leading feminist voice of feminism, braless at the Lakers game last night. So
on TV, or
posing? No, she was Instagram photoing her breasts courtside at the Lakers game. So we're in good hands of America. I know the thing about feminism, modern feminism, is the whole idea is that anything a woman does that she wants to do is empowering. She could smear feces on her face, But if she chooses to do that, that's somehow empowering.
Right.
So if you're just selling your tits on camera, that is now empowering, which men don't have the same luxury. All right, Sir Williams, GQ. I'm canceling my subscription. I don't think I ever had GQ before. I always looked at guys who picked it off the rack, and wonder what's wrong with you? Like, what's going on with you? Like, why would you? There's all these men's magazines here. Why are you picking GQ? Matt, I believe you were weaned off your mother's breast at the age of 1 week. That's the suck, by the way. Having a baby sucking on your tit, I hear from every woman that it just hurts and it sucks. And women, modern women complain a lot more probably than in the old days when it was just expected of you. But apparently it's a fairly physically unpleasant experience over time.
I would imagine that it is. I'm sure it doesn't feel great.
I mean, it's the nurturing of your child and the nursing of your child, which probably feels emotionally tremendous, but having a thing sucking and eventually like biting on your breast.
Well, it can really tear up a set of nipples.
Yes.
I'll tell you that much.
They're never quite the same, which is why I believe that the women who make a living off showing their breasts are not generally the ones who are breastfeeding tremendously, and they're handing them off. And also, by the way, in the old days, they just had wet nurses, so that rich women of means, did not have to nurse the children at all.
How does that work again, biologically? Can you
with a wet nurse?
Don't you have to be pregnant to?
I'm going to go on a limb, having very limited knowledge of female anatomy, and say that women can't. They obviously, when they give birth, they create milk. Their mammary glands start filling up with milk. But also, women who have given birth, if they continue to nurse just constantly, it never goes away.
That's frightening.
Yes. Which leads us to the lovely Sharon Spink from England. I like to say that fat, ugly, obnoxious women making points in blogs and on magazines are only a British problem, but they're not. But the UK Sun does always find them. So Sharon Spink had a big news story this week because she was this woman. I'm sure you don't remember. You don't follow nursing stories like I do. 4 years ago, the UK Sun did a big spread on her. She was still nursing her child at 5, which is only made more horrific by the fact they had tons of photos of her 5-year-old nursing on her breast, on her bare breast, while she's dressed for kindergarten, which is what's the oldest age you've ever seen a child you've physically witnessed a child nursing? That's an odd question.
I mean,
have you ever seen an unduly older age child beyond what you thought was
No, just a baby. I would say 1 maybe. I don't know.
I've seen up to 1 probably, but then I was on an airplane one time and this it was a German. They were German. I know they're speaking German. It wasn't. I don't think it was an international flight. I don't remember. It was a long flight. Kid was acting up, screaming, crying, just complaining, whining. I'd say he was 6 years old, maybe. Long flight, just antsy, cranky, whatever. So his mom calls him over, lifts up her shirt, and puts him on her tit. And I was like, whatever she said in German. And here's the thing I thought. First, okay, good. Finally, the kid should fucking shut up. That's great because you've been going on for an hour. But it looked so disturbing to me. I don't know what it was. I mean, the kid was walking. He was dressed like a normal, first grader.
I was going to say, once you're out of the onesie and you're wearing sneakers and little jeans.
Your Reebok pumps.
Yeah, I think that's the cutoff.
And I don't know. I assume he was suckling. I don't know. He was definitely on. It was attached to her boob with his mouth. And I thought that was disturbing. So when I see these stories, I'm always kind of fascinated by how grotesque and sort of gothic they are in their visual representation.
That's why I wouldn't be a great parent, and I know that. Which is, I'd be like, well, why don't we just get the formula?
Yes.
And because I don't want your boobs to be all chewed up, and it'd be like, well, research has shown the kid will be kind of underweight, and I'd be like, fuck it.
That's okay. We got an obesity problem in this country.
Yeah, there you go. Kid can lose a few pounds.
Well, there's a new thing I think pushed, especially by celebrity culture, of nursing, because celebrities who have all of 1.1 child want to show you how difficult their lives are when they have children. They have to show you. So they, of course, have these glamour selfies nursing their children, while they're in the dressing room chair.
Right.
You know how hard that is when you're trying to get hair and makeup done before a TV show. When you need to nurse your child. That's the average average American woman's problem. So you have Alyssa Milano with her hair done, her breasts perfectly out, and the baby on her breast saying, I don't care what people think about me. I'm going to nurse my and love my child as I see fit. And you're like, who are you arguing with? And by the way, can you show some more tits without the baby?
Yeah, it's become a real I am woman thing. Like my girlfriend worked at UCLA, and they hired a woman as a consultant or whatever, so she was coming in as a new person. And so she said, I need like a private room allotted so I can do the breastfeeding. And they said, okay, and whatever. And then she said, and I need you to purchase a mini fridge where I can store the milk. And even UCLA was like, why don't you go fuck yourself? Like, this whole thing of, so it's something that people have been doing, obviously, for
clearly nursing is like
years.
Evolutionary nursing. You assume the poor, the culture, and the mother and the person, the more they rely on breastfeeding to nurse their child, because they don't have access to modern Western things that mothers do here in the United States, which is tons of other options to feed their child, especially after they get to be 3 or 4 months old.
Right.
So they're poor. They have no food. So they breastfeed the kid till they're 2 or 3 sometimes, because that's the only nourishment they can give them. But of course, it's always the wealthy women of Brentwood who are showing off the need of their child to nurse when they're the least likely child who actually has to.
Well,
have
is that
nursing.
more efficient? I'm not a doctor, but so the mom is just eating all the calories and then converting that to milk. I mean,
it's very high fat. It's a very high in fat content. It also passes antibodies. I mean, it's depending on the research you look at, it's very healthy. And then of course, there was a time when I'm pretty sure I was a formula kid. There was a time when formula was invented and became widespread, and everyone went all the moms went yay, because fuck, especially with back in the day when moms had 3, 4, 5 kids. A lot of fucking nursing going on.
Yeah.
So it's not like Alyssa Milano with the one kid. This is like a Catholic mom with like 7 kids, and they're coming year after year. The fucking Irish twins are coming year after year, and they're like, their tits fucking hurt, and it's tiresome. And then sometimes you can't get the milk out, or there weren't pumps back then. So
I was gonna say, is most guys, whether or not they want to admit it, they find the act somewhat disturbing, or at least like off-putting. But isn't it just the actual sucking? Like, couldn't you just pump it into a bottle or pump, a pump or squeeze
that's
it?
what they do. That's what women who work do now, because they can't be with the child all day long. So they pump and put it in the fridge, and they or somebody else can feed the child the same exact milk.
Yeah, because to me, the kid drinking the glass of breast milk is not, it's not the worst part to me. Is a 9-year-old sucking on a boob?
Yes,
because it's sexual at some point.
Well, I don't agree. I disagree with the people who are calling her this. So this woman, Sharon Spink, after being keyed up 4 years ago in a big UK Sun spread about her 5-year-old nursing on her, took all the harsh feedback and decided to continue to nurse for 4 more years, and just did her final spread in UK Sun. Now that her daughter Charlotte is 9 and has decided on her own to wean off her mother's breasts.
So I didn't read this. Did
you see the picture? Did you see the photo?
I saw the photo. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a contingent of people holding this woman up as a hero? I'm sure she fancies herself like a real progressive revolutionary, but does she know that this is a freak show? This is a novelty story along the lines of a Jerry Springer show.
I think so. That the support for nursing in the Western world sort of drops as a child gets older and older. So let's say 80% of women think you should breastfeed an infant, and then 60% think after 6 months, and then 30% after a year, and then by 2 years it drops to pretty much close to 0. And so the number of people who actually support a woman breastfeeding a 9-year-old, just a hardcore breastfeeding activists who are stuck in their own pathology and their own brochures that they can never say it's wrong to breastfeed a child, because they're stuck in their little mantras that it's natural and normal, and the child will decide when it's time to stop breastfeeding.
Yeah,
which is of course utterly ridiculous. I don't even let my kids set the thermostat. You don't let your children. Everyone always says that. Like, we saw this when we talked about the boys who were dressing as girls at 7 or 8 years old, the celebrity kids.
Yeah,
and they're always like, "This is what my son wants to do. This is his decision. We let him make it." I'm like, you don't let your 7-year-old make super important decisions around the house.
No, they're dumb as shit. Wouldn't they just eat Skittles all day?
Yes. They don't decide what they eat. They don't let them decide where they go to school. They don't decide like I said, thermostat. I don't let my kids hold a remote. Like, you know, you're not allowed to pick out what programming you watch. You're going to decide on major issues such as like, will my diet consist of sucking on my mom's boobs when I leave fourth grade?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I just let my dog piss on the carpet. You know, I just let him do whatever he wants. Sometimes he bites little kids on the face. It's, you know, it's just whatever he feels. Like, no, you fucking have to lay down some serious ground rules.
Yeah, you tell the kid, look, you're 2 now. You're not going to be on mom's breasts anymore. I mean, I assume some kids still want it then. I mean, guys, of course, want breasts their entire life. I assume it's born out of that desire to breastfeed when they're babies. They still want the boobs. There's a whole boob culture we have going on here. I assume it starts at nursing, but this is kind of disturbing. And of course, it grows out of these like self-righteous memes of like, okay, so like there was a whole scandal we've talked about many times in here about like self-created scandal of like women who are nursing in restaurants or other places feel like they're being doxxed by people and they're being attacked by people for breastfeeding in public when I've never, ever talked to someone who knows anyone who's been attacked by breast. There's like just not many people, and by the way, it's always women when it does occur, who will like march over to a woman breastfeed her infant and say, stop that disgusting behavior now. Like, who says that? You know, a lady will usually go over sometimes, an older lady especially, say like, can't you do that in private, sweetheart, or something like that?
Right.
But there's no attack of nursing. Remember they had those ads with like, for breastfeeding rights. It was breastfeeding rights, and they showed like the dirty bus station toilet, right, like the needles and stuff. And they said this is where women are forced to breastfeed, like in diarrhea-ridden 8th needle toilets. Like that's the only 2 options. Like it has to be whipped out at Denny's, or it's in like the bus terminal or the Port Authority fucking AIDS bus toilet station. Like those are the only 2 options, as opposed to like just going off the side somewhere. I remember my wife used had a little blanket you use. Yeah. Some little thing. It's not that difficult. So obviously this is an activist.
No, I mean, I confront strangers more than most people.
I believe that.
And when I see, so it's like, you see, like, what is that person doing? And then I see what they're doing and I go, oh God. And then I like walk the other way. It wouldn't occur to me, you know, they're not harming any. You know, they got the little blanket.
No.
It just takes you by surprise. Like, wait, what's going on? Oh, okay.
I don't say. I mean, the only person I ever talked to is the guy who keeps urinating outside my burger place. There's a homeless guy. And like if I see someone like whipping out his dick and just urinating in the bushes, then I'll just fucking tell him, just go somewhere else, buddy. I mean, he doesn't give a shit. But I feel obliged to say something because there's like, first of all, it's disgusting. And second of all, there's like just kids and women walking around, and the guy's drunk and just pissing in the bushes in the middle of the day. Yeah. So I feel like that's the standard of which like your civic responsibility engages. I'm never going to go up to a woman who's feeding if she's feeding her 9-year-old, maybe I launch some ketchup packets at her or something to her head.
Yeah. Well, no way her husband's around, so you don't have to worry about him.
No, well, of course, as you know, Matt, there's always the skinny, nerdy husband in these situations.
The husband's always underweight,
like a milk toast, like soy. We call them soy boys, like small little breasts, and like a skinny dude with glasses who like always 100% supports his wife. Clearly, they're not having any sexual relations in their. Well, they're producing children somehow, but clearly they're not having a normal sexual lust-filled marriage.
Yeah, and the husband is clearly like whatever this pathology is of the breastfeeding. It's the husband's part of this whole weird thing, and that he has no personality. You get the feeling he's not really allowed to talk. He might be like retarded.
Yes.
Like he might have like a learning disability.
Does he remind you of those guys who are feeding the obese wives? Those guys who are like feeding ice cream to their like too fat to get out of the bed wives.
Right.
They're always like the skinny dudes.
What is that?
It's so a weird fucking thing. Just stop breastfeeding. They're always the day like attractive women decide to like breastfeed their child till 9. I'll pay attention. I'll think it's an okay thing to do. It's always a woman with a butch haircut, obese, and she's always more than willing to show off naked photos of herself breastfeeding. The poor fucking kid. I mean, it's 9 years old, and now these photos are all over the internet. So when she's 19 at college somewhere, it's like, oh yeah, I've heard your name before. Wait a minute, there you are. You're fucking in 4th grade, sucking on your mom's obese BBW fat titty.
Oh, goodness.
Sorry about
that. Put it that way.
I want to go back to Amazon. Matt, Amy sent an email. I love. Speaking of arch evil people, Bezos. I think Jeff Bezos is the most evil person who looks like the nicest guy in the world. Like he is like. He seems like, I mean, it was always like Amazon was built out of this, like, Seattle thing, and it was like this, like, very counterculture, disrupt. There was always going to disrupt the way business is done for the benefit of all. The very utopian type ideals of Bezos. Meanwhile, he's turned himself into, and I mean, he's largely a self-made man. He didn't come from a lot. He was always a very smart guy. I didn't know that. So, did you know his father was 17 when he was born? It was a high school romance.
I did not know that.
In Albuquerque. So, like, he wasn't, and I think his grandfather was some engineer. The father's father was some engineer or something like that. But nothing like money-wise, smart professional, but nothing like, he wasn't like Trump where he was handed $100 million and made 80. So
$400 million,
yes,
actually.
whatever it is. I mean, this is a guy who, like, he had money for school and stuff like that, but he made the company himself. But now he's become like this evil guy just taking over the fucking world.
And he also definitely has like aspirations of world domination.
Yes, while smiling and pretending he's doing it for other people.
But what has he done that's so terrible? Like, I don't think of him as a bad guy.
Well, he's not intentionally putting every single mom and pop store in the country out of business.
Yeah,
but that's what he's doing. So, and I mean, if he was like a virulent free market guy and just said, well, fuck it, the mom and pops are charging $4 for this, and I can send it to you for $2.80, so it's better for people. And if he was like a very ruthless like guy like that, free marketer guy, I'd be like, okay. I mean, I don't respect you as much, but I understand what you're saying. But he puts on this veneer of like, we are the world, hold hands, we're gonna like make the world better for other people, and he's got himself $85 billion.
Yeah, he has a staggering amount of money, I'm always nervous when people start buying up media.
Yes,
because
yes.
That hasn't worked.
Well, even scarier than that is he's retained like every single huge lobby firm in D.C. to lobby Congress to make sure that everything he's got going now is going to keep going. That they're not going to start like finding ways to break them up or to not give them the cheaper postal rates or other advantage they get. For a while, remember, they weren't collecting taxes.
Right. That's right.
Shit tax
up
free.
until like really recently.
Yeah, and sometimes I still don't pay. I don't know how it works. I still don't pay taxes on some stuff, so I don't quite understand that. But yeah, I purchased I think Amazon for 10 years without paying state taxes, so they were definitely cheaper. And I love Amazon, the service, by the way. So Amy wants to know: didn't Amazon know all along where they were moving and just tease tons of cities to see how slutty and desperate they would be? Because I mean, it was like a year ago they announced HQ2. Seattle was expanding. They're going to move to another city in the U.S. And it was like even worse than the Olympics, I think, when they picked the Olympic cities. Mm-hmm. Because even smaller cities like Dayton, Ohio thought they had a chance. And just like every city mayor and city council came out with these like gross offers of huge tax breaks and cash to like have Amazon come set up shop in their town. It was like an utterly disgusting display of like whoriness.
So Amazon gets much needed tax breaks. The workers still paying all the taxes, actually paying for the facility they're working in, ironically enough.
Yes.
I didn't know that that New York built him a helipad.
A helipad, yes.
But yeah, I mean, there's got to be some federal regulation in terms of, whoever does the most favor, whoever sucks off Bezos the hardest, gets the privilege of having this this big economic incentive. But like when football teams convince cities to pay for their stadiums,
yes,
like I know the argument. It's like it's going to bring in a lot of money. It's like, all right, well then pay for the stadium if you're going to be making all that money. I just think like cities and states should kind of unionize. Pull together and say, look, we're not going to be doing you these big favors. If you want to build your factory, build it wherever you want, but we're not subsidizing it for you.
And the stadiums I know for sure never pay off. They've never, ever paid off. There's a rare circumstance where a publicly funded stadium has ever paid off. And I actually knew, several years back, one of the guys who worked at that, like the lead firm that does those analysis of how much money the city and area is going to make from the new stadium. Because they always say it's going to cost us $800 million, but we're going to make $2 billion in tax revenue, and they fudge, they lie about all the stats. It's stats. They just favor them like very wildly optimistic stuff and all the stuff like that. And so they just literally just fudge it to get to a number they need to convince the voters to vote on it.
Yeah, because the owners know the right people, and then they're like, "Oh, you don't want to pay for it? Well, maybe we can just take our team to Arizona." Or
and they move, and they build them a public stadium there, which is really crazy because these are all obviously billionaires.
It's insane.
Yes,
but we got to agree to stop doing that. If no one agrees to do it, then we won't have to do favors for billionaires.
Amazon reminded me of like if there was a hot chick in high school who knew she was going to the prom or whatever with the high school quarterback. But she starts trolling like the chess club and other guys, like, and just like, oh, maybe I might be available just to see what their offer. Like, I'll take you to like, I don't know if you had those kind of girls in your high school, but like they were very materialistic or might be open to. I remember a guy I knew dated one of the cheerleaders because he could get her cocaine, and she was very open about it. So, which I found refreshing at the time. He was not in her league, but if he could provide some drugs, then they could date for a little while.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Kevin Durant's a free agent and he's like, yeah, I'll go meet with Miami. Yeah, I have no intention of signing with them, but if they want to develop a PowerPoint presentation and take me out to dinner, like, yeah, I'll fly to Miami.
I'll take 3 free days with Fontainebleau and like ladies and cars and restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the funny thing is like he ultimately picked DC and New York. I have to believe those were the top 2 options from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So it was like, there was no chance Akron was going to get this or like Kansas City or Albuquerque or whatever. All these cities like put out these huge presentations and like offered up where's it going to go. And it was all like, come to our town and everything. It was really kind of sad because he was just trolling. I think he was just, he had no intention of going to the other cities.
He's trolling, but I would assume there's also leveraging of New York and DC. Like, hey,
he got $1.5 billion from New York, and I don't know what I assume a similar amount in DC. So he could be near near Congress and his lobbyists. I mean, it would have made more sense if they're going to get kickbacks to at least put it in like a fucking Detroit or something where they desperately need the jobs.
Right.
He put it in basically two of the wealthiest, most economically vibrant cities already in the country, where of course they can be happy to have the jobs, but they don't need more upscaling of Queens and Brooklyn
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous. He could have put it in a city in the Midwest and Michigan or the Rust Belt where they actually really needed the economic boost, and then you could have said, okay, they spent $1 billion, but it's really going to transform this area. They ain't gonna do shit to these other metropolises.
Yeah, they're
just see more guys on razor scooters going to the Starbucks. So it's gonna be a total of like 30,000 jobs between the two cities. I mean, that would have completely, if they moved to like El Paso or one of these cities that was vying for it, would have completely transformed those like downtrodden cities.
right.
So that's why I call him an evil bastard. I think he knew. He was like the hot chick in school. She knew she was going with the high school quarterback to the prom, just trolling.
I agree. I'm sure the
B list.
I'm sure he had it already lined up.
It wasn't like a coincidence they picked the biggest, richest cities to move to.
Right.
Yeah, poor fucking Bezos. He is any guy who's got $85 billion is too much.
How weird is he getting? Is he thinking he's like a black belt in karate yet? Like that type of weird?
He was a weird looking dude. I mean, I'm pretty much on the capitalist side, but it's scary when people have that much money. When they literally, the accumulation of wealth of single individuals, where they literally can do whatever the fuck they want. They can actually be a Bond villain. Like, you have so much money, you could literally buy countries. You can literally buy governments. You can whatever you can do that. If you had like Jay-Z money, you couldn't do because he's only got $300 million.
Yeah.
So he can buy nice houses and cars and a private island maybe in the Bahamas, but he can't shift world events.
No, I mean there's a problem with the system and with the way that these profits are allotted. And obviously he's super smart and he deserves to be wealthy, but for one person to have as much money as the next 200 million people, it's not healthy. It's a problem.
It's not healthy, especially when you find out that there are, maybe I don't know what Warren Buffett's doing behind the scenes, but especially when you hear that they're actively lobbying government agencies on commerce bills and economic bills.
Yeah.
When he's using that money to actively get more money.
Right.
I'm sure Bill Gates does that too. Bill Gates has his foundation, so he's like saving millions of lives around the world, and he's probably doing lobbying too. But when they're actually using that money to move governments, that's when it becomes really scary. I mean, you want to buy a fucking yacht or own a football team, that's fine. But when you're actually engaging in things that might actually hurt other people, then it becomes really scary.
Yeah.
So I'm no longer shopping at Amazon for the next 20 minutes. I haven't been to a store like in 11 years. Fucking love Amazon. Wait for the drones. Matt, during the were you affected by the wildfires in California? How did West Hollywood? I heard it was flaming.
No, yeah, I didn't get any
smoke. Did you get some smoke?
Nope. I drove into the valley and it was really smoky, and I momentarily got kind of nervous. But then I was like, "Oh, well, if I was going to catch on fire, this road wouldn't be open." So,
good thinking.
Yeah, thanks.
It's the kind of thing people say right before they die in a fire, in a conflagration. I was just thinking, like, the smoke was really bothering me. Then I thought this is probably Cher's home, and then I felt a little better about myself.
Well, you're in fire country.
Nah, well, the Bel Air fire was bad last year. We almost had to evacuate, but mostly it's over in the western part of what would be the valley, where it's. I mean, they're built up in the hillsides, like heavily in the hillsides, and there's a lot of vegetation around. But once you get to a certain urban density, the fire danger is not really that dramatic. But if you're against like 5,000 acres of brush, you're in big trouble. I don't care where you are. And also, you got to clear. You definitely have to clear you got to clear a thing around your house,
right,
which a lot of people don't do. It's just crazy. The way California builds is crazy. So we just build in all these fire, and then there's the fire, and then there's the floods, and other natural disasters. People don't understand this. I think when they complain about hurricanes and tornadoes, there's a lot of natural disaster in California that are not earthquakes. Everyone says, "Oh, yeah, earthquakes." A lot of fire and mudslides and people dying from shit in California that. For some reason, the news doesn't. Someone was asking, how come when there's like a hurricane in Florida, there's like all the news stations do 24/7 coverage for like a week, but when there's massive wildfires killing tons of people in California, the cable news outlets cover it for like 10 minutes a day.
Dude, I was watching the news. Remember in San Diego when there were what was it, mudslides, or people were losing their houses?
Santa Barbara, you mean? Up near Santa Barbara, like Oprah's.
This was before that, but same type of thing. And the newscasters were kind of laughing about it. It was weird. They were being very glib. It was almost like "fuck these rich people."
Yes,
was the attitude that I picked up on.
Yes, well, that's part of it. Also, I don't think that. Well, I mean, if you notice the local news, you're watching local news, they would actually put their reporters pretty close to the fires, and they'd always say, "I got to get away from here. The fire's coming." The best coverage, by the way, was when this woman, she didn't. I understand how social media works. A reporter for one of the local news stations had found a burnt cat. So the cat was burned. The firefighters put it in a cage, and they gave it to her because the whole place is evacuated. So only news media is allowed. News media is the only civilians around. It's like they'll let the local ABC truck, go up there with the news reporter, but there's no other people around. There's a fire burning everywhere. And so the firefighters rescued a cat from a home. It was half burnt. It was still alive. And they gave it to this reporter and said, "Here, you take care of it. We have to go fight more fires." And the woman, instead of like doing something with the cat, is like going, "Okay, we can't leave here because we have to report from this area. So if someone could come and get the cats." And this poor little burnt cat, like I don't even like cats, but it was singed. It was blackened and singed and still obviously alive. Its whiskers were all burned. And she's like, "If only I could leave here to save this cat, but I have to stay here on point and report pictures of fire behind me." And so, of course, like social media, she put out her Twitter thing, "If anyone can help." Social media just lambasted her with like, "Get the fuck off the camera. You're not doing anything. Drive the fucking burnt kitty to the vet and take care of that thing. Like, if anyone can get up through the fire lines here to save this cat, I'm too busy," as she's doing like her makeup in front of the burning homes.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. Did you see the story, which I haven't been following the news that much, so sorry, but there was a couple that was, so in Malibu, there's like this serial killer that the sheriff's department is like covering up, and they finally arrested a guy.
Yes.
But they don't
know. Yes, I remember that story.
If it's the guy or not. And he killed a family at the campground. But so there were two people found in Malibu, and this is just, I don't know how this works, but they were found burned in their car trying to escape the fire, and it said authorities suspect foul play. And I'm like, how is that possible? I can't wrap my mind around it.
How could we murder someone by burning them in the car?
How you would murder someone in the middle of a fire? Like,
it'd be a great by the way, a great time to kill someone if you want to kill somebody. Since there's a bunch of people like burning up in homes.
Right.
The last thing they're going to do is look for like a knife wound on somebody who's burnt to a crisp in their home.
What a dick move, though. They're already in the fire, losing their house.
As far as I can tell, most everybody, I mean, up in Northern California, it's a little different. They're in a very wooded, secluded area. But most everybody gets injured or killed in the fire is people who refuse to evacuate.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're very good. I got all the evacuation orders. They're very good about the evacuation orders. You have hours, pretty much always, at least an hour. It's always the people who want to stay and save their home who get burnt,
right.
Always. And then the horses always die.
Well, yeah.
So here's the story. So Kim and Kanye, they live in that area. They have owned multiple homes, obviously, but they built this huge mansion in Hidden Hills. And I don't know, it's $15, $20 million, $25 million. Who knows what it's worth? But people are upset because they found they hired private firefighter / security to keep their homes safe during the fires. And somehow everyone got upset about this. Like, this is like some devastating, lack of equality news. Like, rich people would be hiring their own firefighters to save their homes during the fire, or security from looting or things like that, obviously, which is going on. I don't understand that. Isn't that the point, Matt, of being rich? Is that you buy really nice shit and then you hire people to protect your really nice shit? I mean, that's why you're rich in the first place, isn't it?
Well, in their case, no, but usually, yeah, I mean, it sounds like a good idea. I can't imagine criticizing someone. It has to just be because everyone hates them. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine a normal person being criticized.
Yes and no. There's one thing I've noticed during the fire thing was so Gerard Butler or Cher or someone else. So the biggest, of course, national story about the fire is that celebrities' homes got burned down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then people got really angry. So there's a picture of Gerard Butler going look, I just lost my whole house. It burnt to a crisp. His cars are all burnt. And everyone's immediately goes to who cares? You could buy multiple houses. You could buy so many more houses. Shut up, motherfucker. I'm dude just lost his house, okay? I mean, obviously, yes, he can afford another house. But is this the time after 5 years of loving Gerard Butler that you're actually going to call him a motherfucker? People got really into this, wealthy people sort of deserve to have their homes burned down. It's a very Les Miserables thing going on, French Revolution thing, where they normally love lifestyles of the rich and famous, but then suddenly when people lose their homes and are dare to complain about it, they're shut up, rich, wealthy motherfucker. You probably have 7 other homes in Hawaii and wherever else. And I think that was part of the reason why they hated Kim and Kanye. You're so rich you can afford your own firefighters. Yeah. I mean, yes, isn't that why they also probably have the best doctors? They rent the whole Cedars-Sinai top floor when they have babies. They have everything that's nice. They have lots of nice things because they have lots of money. That's why you have money.
Yeah, I mean, are these people saying that if they were as rich as Kim Kardashian that they would let their house burn down without taking any measures to stop it? I would think you would do everything in your power to stop it.
I mean, if you were rich and you insisted the fire department come to your house first because you had connections, I can see that. Other people lost their homes, you had your home taken care of first. And by the way, I have to believe some of that goes on. I think when Cher calls, I think she gets better service. But they didn't do that. They just hired additional private people to take care of their home that they paid for themselves, and obviously did not hamper any of the other fire departments from doing their jobs.
Did it work? Did the fire actually approach their house?
I don't think it ever got that close to their home. They were. I will have you know, the Kardashians were all 3 sisters were evacuated from their various homes. They live up in Hidden Hills, where Will Smith and did you see Will Smith's son came out? He's gay.
Finally.
Yes, I know. I don't want to shock you, but Will Smith's son claims he's dating another male rapper, and by another male rapper I mean a male rapper because I'm not sure what he is. Although I don't necessarily believe the story because Jaden Smith came out with the announcement while he was performing at a Jaden Smith concert, which I don't think exists in the first place. Because I can't imagine who goes to see a Jaden Smith rap concert.
I picture Will Smith hiring a bunch of extras and not telling Jaden Smith.
Yes, everyone who's working on his current movie have to go over there afterwards and pretend to be in it, while his son announces that he's in love with Tyler, the Creator, who, by the way, in response to Jaden Smith saying that the two of them are dating, came up with the cute response. Oh, that nigger's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know.
That's like that is. I don't.
Tyler, the creator, was gay. Did Jaden Smith just kind of out Tyler?
I have no idea what's going on.
Why are we?
These crazy kids. But so isn't it like? Here's the thing: if you're going to have a country where you not only allow people to become rich, but also adore them for being rich. Literally, the Kardashians are adored for being rich. That's a big part of their shtick, is that they can buy all the stuff, go on these great vacations, live in these mansions. They buy each other Ferraris for birthdays. That's their part of the popularity, is that materialistic culture.
Right.
And then when they actually do something like life-saving or home-saving, that's the time, you're not going to criticize them for the $12 million engagement ring, but paying $50,000 to have private firefighters during a fire is when you're going to go after them.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if Kim Kardashian just said, like, I'm just trying to protect my family and my children, like, half of those people would be like, oh my God, she's a hero. Like, I just think the level of fickleness is so much that you can kind of tilt the scales with one cliche.
She's always voted, the most hated celebrity every year. They have the vote in some magazine. She's voted the most hated celebrity, and I've never, ever met anyone who defends her, like on a real level. But she still has millions and millions of fans who pay lots of money and follow everything she does and buy shit she sells. So I'm not sure who they are. They're definitely out there. And maybe they're just too embarrassed. Maybe it's like you said, like Trump supporters are just too embarrassed to say anything. But like 50 million people voted for Trump, but it's hard to find somebody, especially around here. So like Kim Kardashian has 12 million ardent followers, but I, for the life of me, can never find someone who admits to it. But they're still buying her fucking perfumes and their clothes and handbags and shit.
Yeah, it's weird.
Odd. If I was rich, I would have my own firefighters and Mossad. I'd walk around with Mossad guys.
Oh yeah, I'd have a whole police force.
And then I'd antagonize people. What else would you do with like what else would you do with like huge amounts, copious amounts of money? I mean, they buy lots of houses, and I guess that's kind of fun for a little while, or cars, and I don't know. What do you do with all that money? You can't really.
I'd pay people to fight each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Hobos or like legitimate fighters? I
would fight the cop that gave me a ticket.
Really?
Yeah, I'd tell him to get out of his uniform, and
you would pay him to fight you in a fair bare knuckle fight. Bare knuckle?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad idea, actually. Yeah, I'd probably have a few people killed. I don't know. That would get really. I mean, after you spend like $2 million, I think you get bored of spending money.
Yeah.
And you got another $300 million left in your bank account. What do you do with it? You just look at your kids and relatives who are coming after you for cash all the time. It would suck. That's why those guys are. That's why I think they're so are adamant, like to give away 90% of their money. It's because they'll still have like tons of money left, but you have too much money, then just fucking everyone wants to do something. I'm always amazed too. By the way, like in Mexico, if you have more than $20,000 on you, you get kidnapped.
Right.
But in the U.S., you can have be billionaires, and they don't ever seem to get kidnapped ever.
Well, I'm not buying Warren Buffett's whole shtick. That he
living in the small ranch house.
Yeah, he lives in a suburb of Omaha, and he goes to McDonald's every morning. It's like, okay, well, yeah, someone would just kidnap you immediately. You
think he's got a button and he pushes? He's got a huge underground lair. It's
yeah,
like state of the art, like Batman type shit.
Yes, I do.
I don't.
I think his humble car is bulletproof.
What about his secretary he's had for 40? His secretary he's had for 40 years. He still makes like $32,000 a year.
I just don't think that one of the richest people in the world can lead a normal life the way he.
Didn't we used to have kidnappings in this country? I feel like we used to have. I mean, there was the Getty kidnapping years ago. They keep making movies about
Patty Hearst, or she was just a criminal.
They kidnapped her at first, I think.
The Heineken guy got kidnapped in Amsterdam.
Yes, yeah. It's just people walk around. It's weird. They will kill each other for like $200 worth of shoes, but they won't kidnap a guy worth like $500 million, which probably can't. I don't know how much. The Kardashians I know travel with security. They have 1 or 2 security guards with them everywhere they go. But that's not a lot of security. That's like Secret Service level security. They have that 6'8" tall, like 350-pound black dude who goes with them everywhere, who just intimidates the shit out of people. And they probably have like a smaller guy with a weapon on him somewhere. But I imagine 4 or 5 reasonably trained people could take them out. I'm not suggesting you do that, by the way. Matt, as always, we have a topic of rape, which I always go to you first on. Sexual assault, rape, battery.
It's a real theme emerging to the show.
Yeah, there is. I don't know if you ever read Quillette. Quillette I can't remember the name of the woman, Claire, something who started it. It's an online, basically intellectual magazine, blog area for not just female writers, but typically female writers who are strong women and call themselves feminists, but hate the Me Too feminists, basically. Like all the people who think there's a huge overreaction in college campuses and academia, all the stuff with the women's movement, and sort of write stuff from a very what they would consider a very grounded, strong female, but not crazed feminist perspective.
Sounds pretty legit.
Yeah, actually, they have really great authors on there. I mean, I don't agree with all of it, and they're definitely not like, they're not misogynists. They're women who are, some of them are lesbians and others, they're usually come from academic backgrounds, but they're all kind of freaked out by where the trend is heading in the Me Too movement. And the fact that there's been a huge overreach by their feminist compadres.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't like what's happening on the college campuses and the workplace. So this woman, Diana Davison, wrote this article this past week, which I thought was great, although she is Canadian, so I have to score that against her. But she was following a rape trial in British Columbia last year, sexual assault trial, where it turned out the woman was making up it seems like she made up the entire sexual assault by a guy that she vaguely knew. She knew in some social context. And the thing that scared her, she was following the trial for a local paper. The thing that scared her was like how believable the woman was in the case when she was testifying in the pre-trial and then eventually in the trial. And how she would talk to other women about this, like, oh God, this woman seems so believable. Think she had all this detail about what happened during the rape. It was more of like a date rape situation where he wasn't beating her, but he was like telling her it'll be over soon. You should feel lucky that I picked you because I could get any woman I want. And she just sort of closed her eyes and did all this stuff like as you might see in a Lifetime movie. Although I imagine that's how a lot of rapes actually happen. And as the trial went along, things came out about this woman. That, for instance, she was a social media sexual assault advocate and activist. Okay. She ran multiple groups about sexual assault support and things like that. And then this female writer's like, okay, well, that obviously doesn't automatically scoot. It's not like someone who is a sexual assault activist can be raped, obviously. That can happen. As I've always pointed out to you, it's always the people on the airplanes who are always asked to leave somehow are always bloggers and activists. It's just quite a coincidence. The people
you could get into advocacy after you were actually raped.
Yes, this would be advocacy. In this case, it would be advocacy first.
Okay.
And then they started to notice things like how well conditioned, how dramatic she was in her testimony, how forthright, unlike a lot of women who are victims of sexual assault, who are very meek, somber, and hesitant in their testimony. Her testimony was very strong and powerful and strident, and she was saying, like, very clearly stating things that had happened, stating the impact it had on her in a very coached up kind of way. Mm-hmm. And if you watch enough rape trials, I assume you can tell that like 95 out of 100 of them, the woman's like crying and barely can talk, and she's having trouble remembering things. And then here's this other woman who's like remembering everything in details as if she's speaking in one of her activist videos. And then on top of that, they found that she had done this project for sexual assault victims where they created collages of all the quotes of all the things the rapist had told them during the rape, spoken during the rape.
It was like a therapeutic thing?
Yeah, it's like a therapeutic empowerment project. And then they started to notice, the defense attorney started to point out in her testimony that things she was saying were nearly exact quotes of the rape collage quotes that they had made 3 years earlier. So, like, he fucked me like, I thought it was a pillow, or things like that women had written down, that she was now actually quoting verbatim as things she said during her.
She's not too bright, huh?
No. Well, and so what happened was eventually the woman, I don't know how Canadian law works. Apparently they're a few hundred years behind the rest of us, but she decided to stop testifying, and the prosecution decided to put the case on hold when it was really clear that she was fudging an immense number of facts in her testimony, and there was no other evidence in the case. It was a testimony versus testimony case. There was no other witnesses, no other physical evidence. And so they put the case on hold, which was sucked because the guy is still now in this semi-permanent, forever limbo of having been accused of sexual assault for which he was not acquitted. And also apparently had to spend $100,000 on his defense, and they mortgaged the house and all sorts of shit like that. But her point was, Diana Davison's point was that like the sexual assault advocacy movement has become so sophisticated on college campuses and other places through social media and stuff, and to some benefit, of course, to women who've actually been sexually assaulted. But there's this whole industry now, and it's so open and so available that women have been coached on the language and the processes of making sexual assault allegations, to the point that it's impossible to tell the real ones from the fake ones anymore. Like, you can't immediately, like, a cop can't hear, like, a woman saying what happened and know that she's discredit her and know that she's lying, because they actually have access to, like, coaches, and here's what you say when you've been sexually assaulted to the police, to the prosecutors. Here's the language you should use. Here's phrases you should use. Here's things to make sure you include. And, of course, the groups are trying to do this to help women who have really been assaulted. But women who haven't been assaulted have access to the same information and the same coaches. And they've created this environment where it's like now nearly impossible for anyone to tell. And I was thinking about Christine Blasey Ford, where it's really impossible for anyone to tell if a woman's telling the truth at all anymore.
Right.
And just basically how fucking frightening that is, even for her as a woman, that, you know, there's it's sort of like one of those laws of unintended consequences. Is okay, you've now helped all these actual rape assault victims get through the system, but now you've also created this whole opportunity for fraudulent claims that are so real, so realistic, and so detailed, and so perfectly done that it'll be impossible to impugn them. And these guys are going to be going away for lots and lots of false rape accusations.
Yeah, and which is like the most devious, you know, conniving thing you can do is falsely accuse a guy to get back at him, or simply for your own amusement, or
because you're a rape activist and you've yet to be raped.
Yeah. So I mean, what we have to do, and I'm not saying like, you know, definitely give the women the benefit of the doubt.
Yes. Thoughts and prayers.
In a case like this where we find evidence that you're making the whole thing up, you don't get to just walk away. You know, you have to be charged with a crime.
Yes. And we talked about the case in I think it was in Connecticut or Long Island, with a girl who said the football players raped her in the basement, and she had consensual sex with them and lied to her boyfriend about it. There have been a few cases of women in Ohio who was going to jail for a year for false rape claims, but you have to assume it's a very small number within that 8 or 9% number we said of false accusations. You have to assume it's a very small number of women who are being actually prosecuted after that, because it's just a case nobody wants to take on.
Yeah. Because
you're taking on a woman who accused someone else of rape, unless you have extremely obvious evidence that she lied about this for some really evil purpose. You're not going to want to try that case.
No, but if you have really good evidence, then you may as well. I mean, I wonder what percentage of, I'm sure this varies a lot by the race of the accused and their lawyer, but
you're saying black men don't get justice.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But what percentage of, if it's the guy has no history of anything, and it's a woman saying he raped her and he's saying he didn't, what percentage of those guys get convicted?
I don't know. Something pointed on this piece was that, like, when people say there's no evidence, they used to say there's no evidence, right? So he said, she said there's no evidence. But now they have decided that testimony is evidence. I mean,
right.
Testimony is technically evidence. But now they've actually upped the weight of testimonial evidence. And by the way, she included in this piece a study, which is I love, a study of potential jurors where they're given stories. One story is false and one story is true about different crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And the jurors, just general population people, only get it right half the time. They can only tell the truth from the false stories half the time.
Yeah, I saw that.
Just like, so, you know, I mean, jury is going to believe, they're going to go off it's a flip of the coin, basically, whether or not they're going to believe a false story or whether they're going to believe a truth story. But obviously, if it's a woman crying and the guy said the guy raped her, they're more emotionally inclined to believe her in terms of that coin flip than they are not to believe her. They don't want to be the guy they don't want to be the juror who let off a rapist.
Yeah, and I'm sure if they did a study, it's also if the guy looks like a rapist.
Well, like if he's black, you mean?
If
Yes.
he's black, or if it's Nick Nolte or whatever.
Nick
as
Nolte does look
opposed
like,
to,
does look like a rapist. Adam Silver.
Yeah, he's there's going to be a discrepancy there, but that's.
But you're right. It is almost always minorities who get screwed in these situations.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's a white woman. I mean, come on.
But I'm scared that now that it's upscale white guys at college who are getting nailed a lot. That bothers me quite a bit. But it's just going to increase the number of we've gone this full tilt. This is a full tilt pendulum thing where 50 years ago, a woman could have been raped, cry rape, and they call her a slut and tell her to shut up, and no one believes her. And now it's you have everybody saying not only believe her, but now you have these resources where women are coming up in this rape culture thing in high school and college, and these things on campus where they're told rape is happening all the time. You might be raped. You could be. Just think about the suggestion of this. You have a 25% chance of being raped here at college. Oh, by the way, if a guy, and they've also did studies where the woman in this case herself could not. They asked her to identify what consent was, and she couldn't identify what consent was. So it's sort of if you had sex and you're unhappy, you were assaulted.
Yeah.
And they've been told this, and then they've been told what to say to make it sound worse than it is, or to make it sound more heinous than it actually was. He told me this, or he grabbed my arm and I didn't give him permission to grab my arm, so I couldn't move my arm, or he weighs a lot and I couldn't get out from underneath him. So I was, even though I didn't say anything, I was trapped. There's all these little catchphrases and signals you can give to sort of make it seem as if you were defenseless and you were assaulted against your will, whereas the guy has no idea this is going on. Right. He's just slightly intoxicated and having college sex. And next thing he knows, this woman is describing this horrific crime that occurred in his. I remember Amy Schumer said that in her memoir, she went back and decided she was technically raped her first time because the guy never asked her permission.
Yeah, why not? I was raped.
Yes,
fuck it.
Some fat nerd in high school finally got lucky with fat Amy Schumer, and she decided that since she never said yes, you can take my pants off, that therefore she was raped.
Can I interest you in a rape? Yeah, sure.
I know. I found the whole thing. Hey, shut up.
Well, we gotta go after the criminally go after the false accusers. Like Mattress Girl Sulkowicz, she's still kind of like this figure that's revered, and she's a liar. And she just continued with her routine after it came out that she was just fabricating everything.
Well, this reminded me of Blase Ford, because as I shocked you back in October, I believed her. When I heard her testimony, I told you how much I believed her. And now I'm thinking that, as time has passed and I read more articles like this, and she is a therapist for women who have trauma, that there's this and again, it may not be insidious as a really deceptive, lay out a plan on a piece of paper. A lot of it may just be suggestion and things you're picking up from the culture around you. Is that squeaky voice and the crying and the talking about how she can't fly and she needs multiple front doors and things like that. What I thought once was just the innocent ramblings of a woman who's been traumatized by sexual assault may have been just these embellishments of things she's heard from other patients and things like that kind of get stuck in your head and God, that was so dramatic when she said she needed 2 front doors. That happened to me too. I needed 2 front doors after I was assaulted. So now I don't, by the way, believe her at all. Just these articles have convinced me that when it's too, it's almost too. If I believe you too much, now I don't believe you anymore. The squeaky voice and the tears and I need whatever, and then the whole story about all the, and again, by the way, none of it corroborated from anyone who ever knew her that she was anxious or that she was claustrophobic or that she had all these fears or that she couldn't go out. There was no evidence of any of this stuff. But when she told the story, it was so believable. You saw a woman who looked like she'd just been fucking rattled beyond belief by some massive trauma.
Well, unfortunately, with her and him, we'll never know. I mean, you can feel a certain way, but no one will ever know whether it happened or not.
I really believed her at first, and now I really don't. I still don't like him, but I really don't believe her at all. After reading more of these articles, and especially anyone who's connected in the activist world and the therapeutic world, stuff like that, now I'm just going to believe or spouting coached lines. And again, it may not be where they go I want to be evil and lie to people, coach me on how to do this. It may just be they pick up shit Like, think about college girls these days and how much shit, rape culture shit they pick up. They're so hostile, anti-male, anti-sex, rape by the time they go through 4 years of college. They're completely open to the idea that a guy they had sex with the night before might have raped them, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's girls that have been in relationships with guys and later decided that every time they had sex with the guy, it was rape.
Yes.
Which is like something only a complete lunatic would believe.
I think 20 years ago, we all would have laughed at that person and called them a loon. But now they're filing charges, and the guy's in trouble.
Right.
So it's changed dramatically. Yeah, that article scared the shit out of me. And the one thing I'm glad about in terms of not being in a dating culture anymore is shit like that, because that just scares me. Like, because I'm, you have to work. You have to like have a checklist. You need that app. You need that consent app where you both speak into the app and sign your name and have it auto-verified each step of the sexual process. I would just get one of those.
I've decided, mostly for my own benefit and because I'm tired of wasting time and buying drinks for girls that are just bored and killing time. I'm not dating. I'm not going out with a girl anymore unless we've exchanged fairly sexual text messages.
Yes, that's a good idea.
That's my
that's a good idea. And by the way, keep those messages.
Oh,
Make sure you have them for court.
Keep them for a variety of reasons.
Court evidence along the way. The thing I cover on CaseyAnthony.com, I cover these teacher sex cases where the female teachers are having sex with the male students because of one of my fascinations. And they could always get away with it, but for some reason they always feel a need to send naughty selfies to the kid and dirty texts.
Yeah.
Like, if you just didn't do that part, you can go like, oh, he's 16, he's imagining shit. There's no evidence of the sex. There's no it's 6 months later, they're taking semen samples like that. It's just he said, she said. And usually the guy's very reluctant anyhow to say it happened.
Right.
But they always find the fucking Snapchat or Facebook messages. Women always have to why are you 37 and sending pictures of vagina to the kid? And then they have to confess.
Right.
Just don't do the photos. I never quite understood that. Matt, you're a fantasy football player who could never play football in real life. We have a email from Eric. So somehow you didn't know the NFL had the biggest game of the season this coming weekend. The Rams are 9-1. The Chiefs are 9-1. It's the first two times teams that are both 9-1 are playing each other in the regular season since 1992.
Oh.
So it's been 26 years.
It's a good stat.
Yes.
You've been watching PTI?
I might have made that up, yeah. But it's very rare that, first of all, it's rare that a team's 9-1. That doesn't happen often. And they're playing each other head-to-head during the season. It just hasn't happened in 26 years. So it's a big game. And, of course, the NFL scheduled it for Mexico.
Okay.
Because that's where you want to play your big – if you're the NFL, that's where you want to play their big games. And I understand why the NBA went to China and why the NBA goes places. Because people play basketball. It's a pretty big sport around the world now. It's a pretty global sport.
Yeah.
It's big in Europe. It's big in China. For sure, it's big in China. Probably not so much in Latin America. Well, the Brazilians seem to try and play. And the Argentinians. But the NFL doesn't seem like... Remember they had that European League like several years ago? Like they had those German teams and stuff? And they had like bad American players whenever they play?
Yeah, I think I just saw...
European football
Real
league
Sports. I think they actually still have that.
Do they really?
But it's like real beleaguered. I mean, it's not going to last.
No. It's just... People in those places love fucking soccer. They just love soccer. And if you love soccer, I'm really convinced that there's an inverse relationship between how much you love soccer and how much you love American football. Like, you can't love both. I just feel that way.
I think we're all just so accustomed to football and condition. Everyone grew up with football. It's a big part of our culture, or a part of it anyway. But I think if you'd never seen football, you're like, what the fuck is this?
You don't think you were like, okay, it's soccer, but you get to use your hands. That wouldn't appeal to you. Like, yeah, why can't we use our hands in soccer? Like, why can't we use our two most agile, dexterous limbs in playing this sport? Why are you not allowed to use your arms?
I don't know.
In this sport? That always bothered me. Like,
well,
who decided that?
Dude, I'm watching football. There are so many rules in football. Like, I'd be like, how come the guys on the line can't move before the other guy moves? Yes. And how come when he caught that ball, they didn't call it a catch even though it didn't touch the ground? There's so many fucking rules that the commentators who do this for a living don't know half the rules.
But there are no rules in the NFL football about limbs you're not allowed to use. There's no rule that you can't use certain limbs when you're playing.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I mean,
but you can't throw the ball forward once someone else touches it. I just think if you don't know it,
yeah,
then you're just like, I have no idea what's happening right now.
Like my dog is really good at kicking the soccer ball around. My dog can move the soccer ball around the grass really fast because she has legs.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing she can't do is throw a football. Like the dogs cannot use their arms for shit. They can't throw anything. They can kick stuff. They can't throw anything. It seems to me you invent a sport and you say, think about how great football is with the arms. Odell Beckham's catches and the passes and the things you do with your hands and your arms. We're just going to take that away, and you can only kick. You can only kick shit. I mean, I'm not saying soccer's not incredibly athletic and skilled and everything like that, but like they do that if something touches your hand, there's a penalty flag. It just bothers me to no end. And I think people who appreciate that call soccer the beautiful sport, or whether the fuck Pele called it the perfect sport, just will never like American football.
Yeah, I think, well, they're too different. I mean, the fact that they're even called the same thing.
They're both called football.
And are somehow distantly related. I mean, football now doesn't resemble any other sport ever. It's like...
Well, rugby, it's close to rugby. I mean, it came out of rugby. It's close to rugby.
There's no other sport where you stand around for 32 seconds
yes.
and then a guy hits another guy and then you stand around again. Like, if you took the whole action of a football game, I'm sure someone's done this. What is it, like 3.5 minutes worth of
yes. Well, that's what allows like fat guys to be good football players.
Right.
So you can be a fat lineman because you're only actually running like 100 yards the entire game.
It's like it's inauthentically been manufactured. Like, there's not supposed to be, right, like 400-pound guys playing a sport, unless you really, engineer it for such purpose. And then
no, I'm not going to sit here and have you talk shit about American sport. But the point is, I think that if you do like football, then you watch soccer, you're like, okay, this is a really shitty version of a more exciting sport for me. And conversely, I guess, if you've grown up in soccer and you've come to believe that like this no hands thing and the soccer is your game, then football, which is like it always seems like the weaker cousin, right? It always seems like the uninteresting cousin. So that's why soccer, I think, hasn't caught on in the U.S. and never will as long as we have football. And that's why I think football will never catch on in the soccer country, which is the most popular sport in the entire world.
Yeah, I mean, they're so different that you're right. I can't imagine the same person really liking both of them.
No. Which is why Mexico seems like a really bad place to host the biggest NFL game of the year. But they're convinced that somehow, I don't know, like Latin Americans have become a huge American football NFL fan for some reason. So they scheduled this big game in Mexico City. Lo and behold, the soccer stadium where they're going to host it because they have no football stadiums, was in very poor condition, and the NFL players refused to play on the field because it was in such shitty shape.
How does the field get to be in that shitty? So they
had a concert. They had a concert of the name of some Mexican guy I won't know, and they played a soccer game there like 2 days earlier.
So the soccer players don't mind the crappy field as much.
Well, I think there was more the concert, and they just couldn't get it ready in time. I'm assuming, I'm going to go on a limb and generalize, say it's Mexico. So they don't have the same thing as they do at like the Phoenix.
It seems doable though to
yes.
get a field
yes.
in order within a week or something.
I don't know why they can't find a good Mexican gardener. I mean, there's just tons of them in LA. They're all over the place. I mean, if you have anything good from Mexico, it's gardeners. And also they have those like 5,000 caravanners doing nothing. They could be re-signed in the field. But they decided to move to LA, which I think, as Eric pointed out in his email, I think just proves that the NFL just needs to stay in America. It's an American thing. It's like, I remember when I was in Europe and people were drinking Budweiser, and it would become popular. I think it was mostly because the American soldiers had Budweiser over in Germany. But clearly, compared to German beer, Budweiser is just absolutely disgusting. American Budweiser, which it is, it's American beer. It's just, why would you be in Europe and drink Budweiser? But it became very popular in Europe at the time, and I felt the same. I felt the same way about it. Like Budweiser should only exist in America. It's a very American thing. Like,
yeah, it's true. Well,
it's crappy and it's watered down, but it's what we love.
But the crossover stuff with internationally from America is, well, like, you said the NBA is popular and that's cool, but a lot of times it's like, oh, they just don't get it. Like, like Kevin Federline, maybe a huge celebrity in
yes,
Latin America
yes,
for all I know.
Yes.
And we look at it here like, what? Why'd you pick that?
How does Paris Hilton sell $1 billion of fragrance in the Middle East?
Yeah, so even if you think the NFL is this amazing product, that doesn't, the rest of the world doesn't have a great track record on what they pick from us.
No, you know what they want? WWE.
Right.
That's just huge. It's huge overseas. It's always people. I don't know, we make fun of American taste, but you go over like the Middle East, other places, and watch what movies they're watching. It's a lot of Steven Seagal movies.
Oh yeah.
So you'll find out they made remember the movie Red Scorpion with Drago from Rocky. He made those Red Scorpion movies, like the first two.
No.
It was just all these Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, Steven Seagal movies. Just kicked out. Went to some vague Middle Eastern country that looked like Turkey and rescued someone. Well, it was a commando like the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and just killed lots of people with guns. And then you go okay, there was the first one was in the U.S. There was always a Israeli-produced canon film with Chuck Norris or someone else like that. And then you realize you saw the one here in the U.S., but they made 27 more for overseas, and they were the number one Red Scorpion 11 was the number one movie in Dubai last year.
Right.
And you're like, what? They're still making Red, and it's no longer got the same actors in it. It's just Red Scorpion 11. This time he's back for good. And they're still watching these fucking movies.
And they're doing stuff from the 80s. You could meet even a cool, relatively normal guy from Israel or Iran comes over and he's like, hey, bro, check out my gold-plated Mercedes. And you're like, okay.
And my acid-wash jeans and my...
Yeah, it's what are you guys doing
rollerblading. They do, and the music is just fucking horrible because it's actually just the Western music 15 years later.
Yeah.
I'm really into they're really into Blues Traveler. Have you ever heard this Blues Traveler? We're really into Blues Traveler. Yeah, no, I'm not that.
Yeah, they pick the weirdest stuff. It's they're trying to be David Hasselhoff, but it's too late.
I don't get any of them. All I know is the NFL is America. Leave it in America. They make whatever $10-12 billion a year. Is that enough? You don't need to conquer the world, and you certainly don't need to go. You don't need to go to Mexico. It's not their sport. Matt, it's time for our Panties in a Bunch segment, our final segment of the day that can only be found on Patreon.com for the people who can put together 4 quarters to listen to the best segment of each week, I think, the Panties in a Bunch segment. And this weekend I want to talk lingerie. Lingerie is awesome. If you're not sure about the Patreon.com experience, just listen to this cheap-ass promo message from Creepy Pedophile Voice.
Run, don't walk to patreon.com/Last Men on Earth. Creepy Pedophile Voice compels you.
All right, Creepy Pedophile Voice, simmer down. All right, Matt, you have something you wish to pimp and promote for the show? Something you're selling?
MattRalston.net, Instagram, the Matt Ralston. Someone else took Matt Ralston.
Are they squatting or are they actually using it?
No, I was in Seattle once renting a porno, and I showed the guy my driver's license, and he said, that's my name as well. And I said, wow, that's a weird coincidence. And then apparently he was better at using computers than me. So
wait, you were renting porn. Where do you have to show ID to rent porn? It's like an old shop?
It was a video store. I just showed my ID to pull up my account.
Oh, I see. I thought you were showing your age or something like that. And you're renting porn, and you rented a guy with the same name as you who took the domain name?
Yeah.
Wow. I would take as a sign to stop renting porn at the store. That's when I'd stop. When you start getting into conversations with people you have things in common with, that's when it's time to go. All right, this is Lex, Last Man on Earth. Check us out on patreon.com. Talk to you next week.
I feed my baby when baby is hungry. Don't stare at my breasts, just let us be. When my baby looks happy, I'm proud of my glance. I'm just feeding my baby, shouldn't have to take a stand. We will breastfeed where we please. We care more for our baby's needs than for your modesty. If you hate seeing breasts in this way, look away. Making milk is why breasts exist in the first place. Just give us some space. We refuse to cower. My body makes milk. What's your superpower?